So now we have with us Ron Henry, who has been at the Living Expo as well.
Right. I actually met Margot there, and up until this year, I had a booth there for like 8 or 9 years. So
Doing what?
I've been a student of Saint Germain's teachings of the Ascended Masters,
Okay.
and so I've been pretty
You've been
much.
participating at the expo?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I've done some speaking there, and we mostly had a booth, and we generally talk to people, make a connection there. So
Right.
there's no big agenda to it.
Okay, so now tell us, what were you doing at the expo?
Well, I had the opportunity this year to help work out and volunteer. I worked with Kenny. He's the producer of the show,
Okay.
and I got a chance to come now as a
And you
participant.
knew him? Oh.
Yeah, I've known him over 8 or 9 years. I've sent him the checks in, so he knows me. And
Oh, you sent him the checks for the table, you mean?
yeah, when you rent a booth, and so we had that relationship as he was the producer and I was a or a vendor, I guess
Okay.
that they call them.
Okay, and what were you representing?
Well, like I said before, a spiritual path.
Spiritual path.
Metaphysical teaching, an
Okay.
esoteric school called the Ascended Masters, and then specifically Saint Germain, which we focus on the last 4 or 5 years. So
Okay.
that's what I have
So
done
were you
previously.
representing a company?
No,
No.
it's like if somebody was going to represent Buddha and they said, I want to represent Buddhist teachings, and they like set up a lemonade stand
Oh,
and
really?
said,
I am a Buddhist, yeah.
yeah, I'm going to talk about my path, and we're going to share maybe books. We didn't have an organization particularly. It's really
Okay.
like I've always felt a connection to this spiritual being called Saint Germain, and I found out during childhood that I knew about this being, and it wasn't until I was like 35 or 36 that I actually found out many people, millions of people,
Knew him?
have heard about Saint Germain. Right, and so,
Okay, so who is he?
well, that's great. I didn't think we were going to talk about Saint Germain.
No, because I don't know.
Okay, let me put it in perspective. I think that if we can kind of like lift up our consciousness to include the non-physical realms, like some people may have positioned Jesus or Buddha, or angels or even elemental beings in a non-physical world, the heaven world or stuff. Saint Germain is what's known as an ascended master who at one point lived in the earth in a physical incarnation and walked through many different lifetimes until he fulfilled a certain level of what we would call God mastery. And then as he mastered the energies of this physical plane, he became one with his higher self first, and he merged with what we call the planes of the I Am Presence. And he ascended back to the spiritual estate, which I believe we have all come from, in the inner realms, the inner realms of perfection, whether in some schools you call it the heavenly state or the spiritual realm, and operates from that plane as an ascended master. That's why we call him the ascended master, Saint Germain.
Okay, and can a
Little
human being find out what level they're at?
I think they can through some natural estates, just like the ladies were sharing about, in a sense, when first you become aware of the body consciousness. Well, the body's a temple, it's a vehicle, right? So we start putting better food into it because we want to sustain the physical vehicle. Well, we also have the soul. We have the spiritual aspect of ourselves, and the soul is an identity in itself too. So the more that we begin to check in and start to show interest in the soul, just like we would as a friend, the soul is going to mirror back its intelligence, its consciousness, its interest in why we're here. And so I think that the soul is a aspect of part of our being that can give us a mirror or some indication of where we're at, so to speak.
Okay.
And then there's also something that, like in the Ascended Master terminology, we would call the higher self. So the higher self is beyond really the evolution of just the soul. It's moving closer towards a perfected state of consciousness. And that probably is a realm where, like when we think about the conscience, the conscience knows what's right, and if we go this path, it's going to lead this way. So we can align ourselves more with our conscious self, and then we're talking about the superconscious self, which we might call where the planes of God mastery are really perfected. So there are these different stages. Now, where do we sit, and where do we really interact with life from these different levels? Some people aren't in touch with their soul at all. They're running around as material beings. Other people have a spiritual sense of their soul, and the soul begins to show more to that person about their purpose in life, and then they may discover their higher self. They may discover their God self. So these are stages,
Okay. We all have a purpose here to be here anyway.
Yeah, I would call it our divine plan. We have a
Right.
divine plan.
Everybody,
Right.
whether we are at the lower level or the higher level.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So, do you know what's your purpose here?
I believe that I know parts of it.
Okay.
And, probably somewhere around when I was 35, 36, I'm 53 right now, I really discovered that I did have a very specific connection to Saint Germain and the Ascended Masters. And I really felt it was part of my work or my divine plan or my mission to reach people,
And let them know about it?
Yes. And
That's your mission?
Well, to encourage and help inspire the divine plans of others. It's not like I was carrying a suitcase along and saying, look, get into the Saint Germain game or get into this realm of spirituality. It was like to connect people through the divine apparatus of my being. Like, I'm a limousine driver. I mean, let's face it, I deal in really practical realms. I take people who go to wine tours, and some of them get drunk. They're not expressing they want to see realms of God, But what I have an opportunity to do there is to connect with people, sometimes through service, sometimes through simply being like a chaperone or a guardian. I mean, to providing safety for people, to touring them in a safe way. And in some way, I believe that's not that far off from the spiritual energies. You're imparting to life a sense of connectedness, And so I do it from all these different realms. It's not like that I'm sitting as a czar and I know the holy teachings, It's like I believe that the God energy has inspired me to share that flame or that compassion or the energy of love with people.
Okay, yeah. Action rather than words. Is that what you're saying?
That's big. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that talk and...
Yeah, a lot of people
Yeah.
just think that love means say I love you, and others say no, that's not what it means. It means doing things.
And that's why the expo this time for me was very specific, because I wasn't sitting in a booth. I got to maneuver from all these positions.
Oh, really?
I got to be a guard, checking people in. I got to check in exhibitors. I got called a couple times when there were issues with vendors or unruly people or some guy being drunk. Many women called me up, oh, mister, will you help me hold up my sign, or will you put this pen in? I got to be a total guy, and it was
So
like...
you were a volunteer?
I was volunteering in that sense, but I was more than that. Just like no matter what you play from your position in life, you're more than that if you choose to be. And I really felt like I was a love minister. You know what I mean?
I was spreading love.
Spreading his spirit.
And spreading spirit, and in a way connecting with people and being interested in their past. What are you about, sister? What are you about, brother? And in that spirit, I got to meet all these people, and I felt like I was plugged into the hub. And I never really had to attend many of the seminars.
No.
Because the action was on the floor. You know what I mean? It was with the people. And, interesting things were coming up to me. I was meeting all these women. They were coming to me, and I was going, oh. And I felt like the divine feminine energy was rising in me, and it was like, it's pretty exciting, I didn't talk about Saint Germain that much,
Yeah, but...
Yeah.
What did you discover this year at the expo? I mean, every year has a different theme.
Yeah.
What did you discover
I
this
think
year?
the common theme is that the expo really represents a specific hub of people that are ready for the new information. And I'm not just talking about...
they're looking for something.
They're not just looking for something. They're already arrived. A lot of people there, they're at another stage. They've stepped out of the mass consciousness. They're not just taking the media downloads about what's going on in life. I mean, there were a lot of significant things that happened during the weekend of the expo.
No, I'm talking about the visitors. They're looking for something.
Well, yes, the visitors looking, but they themselves have already stepped out of the path just to be at the expo.
Oh, right. Okay.
If you notice the expo, it's not even really diverse like what you think of San Francisco is, because you see certain groups that aren't represented there. It's like this is a very esoteric kind of inner community that kind of defines itself, which I don't see in very few places. And I've traveled in many places. So I think you have a hub of emerging soul consciousness that people potentially represent the new energy, and including information, wisdom, knowledge, and then health modalities, spiritual modalities, and we're all trying to get connected. 2012, prophecy, Nostradamus, changes in the economy, earth changes, all of this stuff. It's like coming together, and it's like, wow, plug in. So there's a lot there.
And did you learn something new besides the fact you were of service, like you said, But what did you discover for yourself this
I
trip?
learned specific things for myself, and I learned things in the macrocosm too. I mean, like I watched Sean David Morton, and I
Yeah.
listened to his things. I bought one of his videos and went back and I go, this soul really has a specific piece of the puzzle, and so I was able to take that away. For myself, I found myself doing some things like I fasted 3 times in the last 3 weeks since I've gotten back from the expo. And I haven't done that for 15 years.
You fasted to detox?
Well, I don't know if it's one specific reason. I'm saying it's like there was this intuition that fasting was an outgrowth of being at the expo for 3 or 4 days and discovering I'm not even eating. I wasn't even eating because the energy was so high and we were so engaged in the energy of love that food wasn't important. And then a woman that I met told me, "Oh, you're on one of those unconscious fasts." I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "It's like when your your being has already said, go into this state." And so since I got out of the expo, I actually consciously went into a water-only fast for 2.5 days. Then I had to go to work as a limo driver. I came back the next week. I went on the internet and said you could fast a day a week. So since then, I've been fasting at least 1 day a week. Why? As people ask me, it's not just to purify my body. It's not just to lose weight. It's not just to detoxify, even though all these things are there. It's a holistic energy expression that I think is...
You detach yourself from the earthly needs and you concentrate on the spiritual.
Well, that's excellent. That's been something that's come to me, Eileen. Definitely, I found out when you don't go after food, you don't go after sex, you don't go after money. What's left?
Spirit.
Spirit. So spirit dwells in those states. So what are we hooked by, in our life? And I found that fasting started to move me, which I already thought I was a fairly spiritually evolved man, into other levels. And one of the things that really connected, I met this woman, she started talking to me about the goddess energy. Well, what is the goddess energy for a man? What is the feminine side of being? To really explore this and to see that, we're men and women are both the energies of alpha and omega. We're both divine feminine and divine masculine. But if we downplayed one, excluded to the other, or if we, so these are the things that have happened to me, these next steps, the fasting and the spherical understanding of what's the composite of my being, how more can I develop, and who am I plugging into that has all these pieces too?
Okay.